this week has been one in our household. I'm leaving, going on a trip, and so it's always tough when you're leaving. You want to make sure you have everything set, right? Especially for fellas, for your wife, your boo thing. If you got kids, you want to make sure everything is. So this week I've been trying to make sure everything's set and good, and doing all I can to prepare the house, and then I made a big boo-boo. You ever made a big boo-boo, fellas, right? Some of y'all babies make boo-boos, but sometimes dads make boo-boos too. And I went to a cafe with some friends, and it was a good day. Went to the awesome cafe on Fairfax, new spot, and super excited, and then came back and I had to go pick up my son. I went to go pick up my son, and I'm like, can't find my car key. That's weird. Look in my bag, look in the pockets within my bag, look in my backpack, look in my friend's backpack car. We go on a search for about an hour, cannot find this key. We had a spare key, but might have also lost that one. So now I have no key to get into the car that I needed to pick up my son, and I'm about to go away, and I'm like, this is terrible. How can I lose this key? But I'm like, no big deal. I'll call the dealership. I'm sure we can get another one. Call the dealership. They're like, yep, that'll be $1,000. I said, I need you to look it up in the system again. Think you forgot I have a 2013 Toyota Corolla? It ain't worth more than $1,000. What do you mean it's $1,000 for a new key? And she goes on to explain why. And I was like, and you ever had somebody try to tell you something, doesn't matter how much they talk about it, you're like, no, sorry, that's a no. And let me just get a key, just a spare key. Somebody's got to have a key. Go to Amazon. You can buy anything on Amazon. Can buy a spare key and then have a friend. And you got a friend that like knows people. Is I know somebody. I was like, all right, yeah, let me talk to that somebody. And they come and they quote and they're like, it'll be almost 500. I'm like, what financial bracket do you think I live in for a key? And I just been so frustrated because even in the parking lot right now, this car is still there. And I can't get in it. I feel so stuck, and I've been driving a massive truck, like a F-350, because I'm borrowing it. And literally I pulled up today and somebody goes, that don't look right on you. And they're right. I'm not a truck guy. I'm a Toyota Corolla guy. But I'm just so frustrated because I'm so stuck and I can't get in this car. You ever been stuck in life before? You ever desperately just wanted somebody to give you a key to unlock where you need to go, but you're like, I don't know how to get there? You ever been there? See, I want to have a conversation with some of you today, hopefully all of you, about some keys in our lives where we can move out of these places where we find ourselves stuck. And there's this passage in the book of Acts that is so profound that I want us to go together. It's in Acts chapter 16. It says, the crowd joined in the attack against Paul and Silas, and the magistrates ordered them to be stripped and beaten with rods. And after they had been severely flogged, they were thrown into prison, and the jailer was commanded to guard them carefully. And when he received these orders, he put them in the inner cell, and he fastened their feet in the stocks. About midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and the other prisoners were listening to them. So to give you a little context in what was happening, and there's this moment in the life of Paul and Silas where they were traveling from village to village, and they were trying to inspire and speak the good news and help where they could. And it says, as they were traveling, there was this group as well, where one of the people in the group had the ability to actually tell the future and was a fortune teller. And it says that there was this spirit living inside of her, and people were taking advantage of her, making money off of her abilities. And it says they were following Paul and Silas, and she was just like a stalker. Everywhere they went, this woman went. And everywhere they went, this woman went. Finally, it says that Paul got so annoyed that this woman was following him. He said, finally, spirit, get out. I don't know what you do on a Tuesday, but Paul was just telling spirits to leave. And it says the spirit left, and all of a sudden she no longer had the ability to be a fortune teller. And the people who were taking advantage of it got mad, and they wanted Paul and Silas to pay. They got thrown into prison for actually helping someone else. You ever made decisions in your life? You ever tried to do the right thing, and you thought doing the right thing would lead you to the right place, but actually you found yourself in the wrong place? You know what I'm talking about? That's called life. Where sometimes we hope that, if I just do the right thing every single time, if I just make the right choice, then I'm going to always end up in the right situation. But God never promised that we'd always be in the right situation, but he did promise that I can help make sure you're the right person. And you can bring that right person to every situation you find yourself in. But I think Paul and Silas had to be pretty frustrated that they ended up in prison for helping someone else out. And then right here, where their journey begins, it says that they were put in the inner cell and they were fastened their feet in the stocks. I love verse 25. As they're chained in this prison, it says, about midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and the other prisoners were listening to them. See, what do you do when you find yourself in a situation you do not want to be in? Does God get your praise or does he get your curse? See, when you find yourself in a situation you don't want, does the best of you come out, the part that regardless of what's happening around you, you're letting God move inside of you? And I think what we can learn from Paul and Silas is that our situation should not dictate who we become, but it should be our character. It should be our commitments. It should be our understanding that sometimes there's things at work that are bigger than even we can imagine. And it says that about midnight, they started praying and they started singing hymns to God. This is just such a beautiful moment that in the worst moment they could imagine, they didn't see it as an opportunity to demean the name of God. They actually saw it as an opportunity to lift up the name of God. And if you want to find the keys that are going to unlock your freedom, if you're going to identify these things in our lives that if we allow them to move in us from the inside out, then the first key that I want to give you to unlock your freedom is you have to become a person of gratitude. Have you ever met just grateful people in your life? Right, Martwan, earlier talking about being in Malawi. Right, some of the most grateful people I've ever met in some of the worst situations I could ever imagine. And every time we go and we serve, and it's like we come and we built a school there and it's incredible. And we have a feeding program and it's phenomenal. And we have meetings with government leaders and there's all these conversations where it seems like, this is about what we can bring to you. But every time I go, I'm so overwhelmed by what was given to me. There's something about the human spirit and those that have tapped into the power of gratitude that it doesn't just change you, it also changes the people around you. Like one of my favorite things about Mosaic and what we get to do is when we get to worship together. And I love that every week we have people that come in to this room. And you're probably here now and you're in this room and you don't know why you're here. We know why you're here. It's because she invited you, right? And you may be not yet interested in Jesus, but you are interested in her, right? And I ain't no shame in that. I love it. Or maybe you're here because of him. And he told you you're hiking Runyon and you ended up in church. Welcome. See, I love that every time we come together here at Mosaic, we have this opportunity to worship. And even if you don't get it, it's okay. Most of us didn't get it. Most of us don't get it. It's not about getting it. It's about surrendering to it. Because what worship is just a conversation around gratitude. And I love hearing stories of people coming in and they're like, I didn't know what to expect or I didn't know what to do. And so I just looked. And I just looked at all you people look so happy. I had a friend one time literally came and he said, I came to Mosaic and I hated it. I was like, cool, nice to meet you. I'm glad you hated it. Yep. He sent me a DM. I was like, so we were talking. I was like, let's grab coffee. And the first intro was like, yeah, I hated it when I came. I was like, well, why'd you hate it? He said, because I came in here And everybody looked like they had it all together. And I said, whoa, see, that's how I know you're wrong, because trust me, I know them. They did not have it all together. I do not have it all together, right? And he said he walked in here and he just felt this over. He's like, I don't belong here because it's like, it's too good. And he said, I just looked and I watched everybody, and during worship, people just felt so alive. And I said, see, you're just a half degree off. See, the worship isn't about that we are good and we have it all figured out. It's that we're celebrating how good he is. And the goodness that he pulls out of us when we connect to him. See, worship is not about perfection. It's about posture. And when we worship together on Sundays, it's us posturing our heart in this place of gratitude. And because it says that Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and the other prisoners were listening to them. See, people are watching how you live. See, when you go through a hard season, when you go through a difficult moment, when you get that bad news, see, so often what I found in my life, the people that I've been praying for, the people that feel like that God has put me in their world, they do not experience the power of God in my good times, because that's easy. It's they watch how I live when it would be so easy to turn my back on God. See, what do people experience in your life when you go through some stuff? When you find yourself locked in a prison, when you find yourself in your worst moments, when you find yourself unable to move forward. See, people are watching not just how you praise, they're watching how you live. They're watching the story that you tell with your life. And some of the most powerful moments you'll have with God will be in the midst of your prison, not just your paradise. And there's things that happen, right, in us when we choose to be people who are grateful, right? And because what gratitude does is gratitude frees you from the prison of bitterness. And that is a prison that I promise it's a life sentence if you allow it to be. And this isn't about what happened to you. See, I know you. And I know there's things that have happened to you, and I'm sorry, and God is sorry. And the same way it breaks your heart, it breaks the heart of God. But the reality is that it happened to you, and bitterness can be that relative that stays with you far too long. You know what I'm talking about? They tell you they're coming for like a couple weeks, and that turns into a couple months. And you're like, cool, but hey, when you going to Venmo me rent? Because I live in LA and I can't afford it on my own, let alone you freeloading off me. I don't know who that's for, but somebody. Right? When you have that unwanted guest that just stays a little bit too long. See, that's bitterness. See, bitterness will start moving furniture in your house. Bitterness will start eating all your breakfasts. Right? Bitterness will make a mess and then not even take out the trash. See, bitterness will be that guest that you have been trying to kick out forever, but you don't realize you're the one that left the door open in the first place. But what gratitude does is gratitude is the eviction notice of bitterness. So you say, you can't reside in here. And you choose to be grateful. And then as it continues in verse 26, after they're singing praises to God and thanking God, and it says all the prisoners are watching and listening, it says suddenly there was a violent earthquake. There was such a violent earthquake that the foundations of the prison were shaken. At once, all the prison doors flew open and everyone's chains came loose. The jailer woke up, and when he saw the prison doors open, he drew his sword and was about to kill himself because he thought the prisoners had escaped. Because he thought the prisoners had escaped. We'll get back to that. But Paul shouted, "Don't harm yourself. We are all here." So if we're talking about these keys to unlock our freedom, the first key that we need is you have to become a person of gratitude. But the second key that you need is you have to discover the power of grace. See, there's this thing about grace that is still hard for us to conceptualize. It's still hard for us to fully understand that what does grace mean? And grace, it's like this free gift that we didn't deserve, but sometimes we don't know what to do with. And in this moment, right, it says that there's this violent earthquake. It says it's so violent that the doors shake and the doors open and everyone's chains came loose. And then this jailer whose one responsibility, he had one job. It was to protect these prisoners, make sure that nobody got out. The moment he sees that the doors are open, he assumes everyone escapes and he grabs his sword and he's about to kill himself. The worst moment of his life. And it was like in that moment, he decided that and he knew that someone had to pay. That if these prisoners were gone, if they were free, it meant that there would be a cost on someone, and he knew that it would be his. And what was customary of the time is that if a prisoner went free, you would lose your life. And so he said, I'm going to take matters into my own hand, and rather than somebody else kill me, I'm going to do this myself. So I just want to pause for a moment. I don't know who this is for, but I want you to hear me. That don't let the worst moment of your life be the last moment of your life. Because for some of us, I know that when you blow it, when you make that tragic mistake or that choice that brings so much destruction to your life, it can feel so heavy and the pain and the weight is overwhelming. And so I don't know what your chains are. Maybe your chains are addiction. Maybe your chains are selfishness. Maybe your chains are you just know how to blow it every single time. And you're like, what's the point? But I'm here to tell you that there is a cost, but you don't have to pay that cost. Because that's why Jesus came. See, that's why Jesus allowed himself to be crucified, to be brutally mocked and murdered. It was so that you can know that, yes, there's always a cost for freedom, but I want you to know I paid that cost. That's mine. And it's this beautiful moment where this jailer is about to end it all because he can't see a way out. But I think that's possibly the reason why God allowed Paul and Silas to be put in a prison for something that they were doing that was beautiful, and they were helping and they were serving. See, sometimes God will allow you to go through something so that you can be there for somebody else who's going through something. And I can't tell you how many times I've blown it. The whole talk would just be me here telling you all the times I've blown it. It's called husband, right? And I remember this one moment in particular. I just totally blew it. And I was a youth pastor at the time, and we had a connection with this organization that was doing these camps, and we talked about maybe bringing in a group out. I said, sounds great. Like, let me talk to my people. You talk to your people. We'll see if the dates work out, and we'll reconvene later. Months later, we had conversations with our team, and it didn't really work out. And so we never set it up, but about a week before the trip was supposed to go, I get an email from this person that says, hey, just double checking you guys are good to go. Can't wait to see you at the trip. I'm like, text back or email back, what do you mean? We're not going. We never said we were going. And then she responds back, oh, we already paid $15,000 on your behalf to send kids to this camp. I said, so like 15 Toyota Corollas, all right? And I'm like, what do you mean you already paid $15,000? We never agreed on it. And we go back and forth. And she's like, no, we already said that you were going and already paid for them. And so here's the bill. I was so mad. Ooh, but you remember, I was like, she worked at this one restaurant and I was like, babe, I'm going to go. I'm just going to go in the drive-thru and just like restaurants, Chick-fil-A, but whatever, we'll talk about it later. And I was just like, so angry. And I was so mad, and I knew that you ever just known you were in the right? But it didn't matter because the consequences were already out there. And you want to fall on the sword, but I was right. And God's like, who cares if you're right? Or are you going to make it right? But I couldn't see past that. And I had to have like worst conversation ever with Pastor Irwin to go, sir, I need to tell you about how I just cost the church $15,000. And do I have a job on Monday? I'll never forget what he said. This moment changed my life forever. As he said, you're seeing it all wrong. He said, absolutely. They have that money. Let me know where we need to send the check. It is theirs because we're investing in those kids' futures. And we're not even going to send any kids, but we want them to know that you can never outgive what God is going to do in and through us. And we wrote a $15,000 check to that organization. And we said, this is for these kids, whoever. We sponsored like 100 kids to go to this camp, and none of them were our kids. And he taught me that principle, that there's something really powerful when you stop worrying about the consequences and you start receiving the grace. Because when you receive the grace, you realize that there's a lesson always in it, that you could give a blessing upon someone else. See, there's power in grace. There's power in surrender. There's power in not trying to make sure you always get it right, but you figure out how you can do the most good in the midst of a terrible situation. Because that's who God is. But then there's this really beautiful moment in verse 26 that I want us to spend some time on. Right at the end, it says that once the prison doors flew open and everyone's chains came loose. I feel like the language of that is really interesting. Everyone's chains came loose. You would think that would say everyone's chains came off. Everyone's chains came free. But it doesn't. It says everyone's chains came loose. Because here's what I have come to realize, that sometimes God may shake some things in your life. He'll loosen it. But you have to choose to be free. Y'all ain't ready. We're going to go somewhere. See, some of you are in this room and you've been wondering why you're not free, and you've been looking to God saying, God, when are you going to get me out of this? And he's like, I already set the chains loose. Why are you still in the cell? Why are you still letting it have a hold on you? He said, it's already loose, but you have to step out and be free. See, some of you right now are in this room, and I know you have a burden on you and a heaviness and a struggle. And you're like, God, take it away. He's like, I already did. I set you loose. Now it's your turn to set yourself free. See, I know that there's marriages in this room that you've been asking for God to rescue. And he said, I have given you the key. It's time for you to rescue it. It's time for you to sacrifice. It's time for you to do what you need. I already did my part. Now, what are you going to do? You see, some of you are in a job that you absolutely hate. Don't say amen. Your boss might be here. Some of you are in a job that you hate, and you're like, God, just get me out of it. And he's like, I already set the chains loose. Now go be free. Some of you in a relationship that you don't love. Dang, I saw somebody go, I don't want to look at you. I don't want to look at you. Yeah. Just tell them before you leave. Okay, yeah. But I'll be real for a second. Some of you in a relationship that you're trying all your best to make it work, but you know deep down you shouldn't be in that relationship for that reason. And you're like, God, just like, get me out of it. Right? You ever want God to get you out of something that he's like, no, it's on you. He's like, so you want that person to hate me because you don't have the courage to do what you know you need to do. That's what we want. We want God, you be the bad guy. And he's like, no. In my nature, I'm always the good guy. And maybe this is the good that you've been waiting to experience, and it's not going to happen until you have the courage to do it. See, I don't know fill in the blank for what it is for you. It could be a dream that God has placed on your heart. It could be a city. It could be a church, right? Don't you get tired of jumping from church to church and be like, man, this place just isn't for me, and you keep waiting for the perfect place, not realizing it's never going to be a perfect place. It's about committing to a place. It's about letting people see you. It's about being a part of the whole, not just the individual. See, there's something really transcendent that happens when we allow grace to wash over us. We allow grace to move in and through us, is that we begin to step into the future that God always had in mind for us. But the future that God has for you, you cannot go into with loose chains hanging on your feet. There's a future that God has for you that you can only step into completely free. And then in verse 29, it says, the jailer got a torch and ran inside. Badly shaken, he collapsed in front of Paul and Silas, and he led them out of the jail. And he asked, sirs, what must I do to be saved, to really live? They said, put your entire trust in the Master Jesus. Then you'll live as you are meant to live, and everyone in your house included. And they went on to spell out in detail the story of the Master. I love that. The entire family got in on this part, and they never did get to bed that night. The jailer made them feel at home, he dressed their wounds, and then he couldn't wait until morning. He was baptized, he and everyone in his family. And there, in his home, he had food set out for a festive meal. It was a night to remember. He and his entire family had put their trust in God. Everyone in the house was in on the celebration. See, this is such a beautiful moment because one, it shows us this really beautiful aspect of who God is at his core, is that God is always about a people, not just a person. So it says that everyone in his household was saved. That everyone in his household stepped into a future full of hope and freedom, that everyone in his household would experience all the goodness that God had for him. And I want you to hear me on that. Every good thing that God has poured into your life, it doesn't just have your name on it, it has a household name on it. That God's always about a household. He's always about a people. And I think that's why Paul and Silas, why God allowed them to go through what they had to go through. It's because God was trying to reach a household. When he's trying to reach a household, he's trying to reach a village. And when he's trying to reach a village, he's trying to reach a city. And when he's trying to reach a city, he's trying to reach a nation. We got to understand that sometimes it's bigger than us. And if we're going to have these keys that are going to unlock our freedom, they're going to allow us to step into our future full of all that God has for us, then we have to decide who we're going to become. We have to decide that first I'm going to become a person of gratitude. And then I'm going to decide that I'm going to find the power of grace. But then if we're truly going to step into our future and we're going to unlock all that God has for us, then we have to run to the future with urgency. We got to stop playing. We got to stop waiting. And I'm just going to say this. Pastor Erwin's speaking in a couple weeks. He can fix this if it's wrong. We got to stop praying. And let me correct that, right? We got to stop praying about the things that we do not need to pray about. We just need to act on. See, there's some things in our life that God's like, get off your knees, open your eyes, and get moving. I've already told you what you need to do. I've already had that conversation with you. Right? Have you ever been in a season with God or a conversation with God where you're like, God, I just want what you have for me. And he reminded you of the thing that he already told you. And you're like, God, for sure, for real. No, for real, God, but can we do another thing too? And he's like, I'm not going to speak about that other thing until you have the courage to act on that one thing. So I think for some of us, it's time to move forward with urgency, to act on what he's already put inside of us, to take all that gratitude and that grace and to decide that the future me is waiting for me. And that there's a freedom that God has called me to. And the freedom isn't a freedom that I simply stumbled onto. It's a freedom that he gave me through his sacrifice on the cross. See, Paul and Silas, they were the embodiment of the person of Jesus. See, when that jailer looked around and he saw those doors open and he knew that there was a cost and someone had to pay, I think it was in that moment Paul and Silas realized this is why we're here. They told him the story of the Master, told him the story of Jesus, who was God in human flesh, who saw that there was a future that we could not step into fully free without his sacrifice. So they told him the story of God walking among us, perfect and sinless, full of all hope and joy and wonder. And they told him the story that Jesus allowed himself to be killed, allowed himself to be murdered, because he knew that there's some choices that need someone to be willing to sacrifice so that someone could have the power to overcome all. They told him the most beautiful story that the world has ever known is that God loved you and I enough to give up his life so that we could find life. And for some of you here today, see, this is your first choice that you need to make with urgency. That you need to stop waiting, you need to stop wondering, you need to stop stalling. And it's time to act. It's time to say, God, I'm ready for all that you have for me. Because there's some choices that are bigger than others. When I was talking to this person working at Toyota of Culver City, and we were having great dialogue about keys, I asked her, I just don't understand why it costs so much money. It's a key. And she begins to describe that it's not just about the key. And if you had an old car, you could just replicate the key and it's fine. But in newer models, there's this chip inside of the key. And if you don't have a spare key and you don't have the main key and you have no keys, we have to take apart the entire steering column and we have to reprogram the entire car to now match that key. And that's why it costs so much money. And I said, oh, cool, I appreciate that. I'm still not going to pay that, but yeah. But it got me thinking about us, right? I think so often what we want that quick fix. We want that duplicate. We want to go down to Home Depot and God, fix my life. Give me a new key. We don't realize that when it comes to God, he is not in the business of duplicating keys. You are one of one. And sometimes the only way to fix what's going on, it's a hardwire issue. That you got to let God get in there. You got to let him rewire you from the inside out. And it's going to take some time. And it might even take a lot of money. But it's the only way that you're going to be able to open up that door that's going to lead you to the future that your soul desperately longs for. And maybe that's somebody here today that you're desperate for God to move and you're desperate for God to shift some things in you and to change some things. But it first has to start with letting him hardwire you from the inside out. Letting him take your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. Letting him breathe his life into you and the words of the scriptures come to life that you are a new creation. And so I want all of us to bow our head and close our eyes, and we're going to create just space for God to speak and move if that's you here today. If you know it's your moment and you know it's time to stop running away from God and to stop trying to have other fixes for what only He can do in your life. And if you're here and as clearly as you hear my voice, you hear God's voice speaking to the depths of your soul, telling you how much you matter to Him, telling you how much He loves you, telling you that there's nothing you could do that could keep you from His love. And if in this moment you're ready to trust Him with everything and you're ready to cross over the line of faith, and I want to lead you in a simple prayer right now. This prayer is you just tell Jesus, say, Jesus, I give you my life. That's it. Jesus, I give you my life. I turn over all the keys. I turn over all the control. I say, God, I'm ready for whatever you have for me. Jesus, I give you my life. If that was you and you prayed that prayer in your heart and you meant it with every fiber of your being, that what I want you to do with a level of urgency, knowing that the moment calls for it. I want you to raise your hand and say, that was me. I prayed that prayer. Just raise your hand. Beautiful. Anyone else? Just keep your hand up. I want to pray for you in a sec. Beautiful. I see you. Anyone else right now? What is beautiful about God is He'll always wait one more moment if there's one more person. Jesus, I give you beautiful. I see you. Father, I pray for everyone whose hand is held high. Jesus, I pray right now that you would overwhelm them with your love. God, I pray that they would feel your presence so powerful that they would know in this moment that they belong to you. I pray you would fill them with your grace, with your forgiveness, with your mercy, with your kindness, with your hope. And Jesus, I just pray that when they walk out of this door, that they would live differently. And the people around them would know that because they had hope, they also can too have hope. We thank you, Jesus, that you are always moving us towards our best future. We love you, and we ask all this in your name. Amen and amen.
Thank you, Pastor Joe, for such a powerful message. If you're listening, wherever you are in the world, and you made that decision to follow Jesus, to take that step of faith, we have one more step for you to take, and that is to text the word decided to 71711. When you text that, somebody from our team is going to reach out to you, and the purpose is so that we can journey alongside you. Know that when you follow Jesus, when you make that step, it's not just as an individual, you're now forming part of a community, of a family, and that's who we want to be for you as Mosaic. We're so grateful that you joined us today. Have a great rest of your week, and we will see you here next week. God bless you.